Okay, we are on week 13, and we are, we just finished Islam, very important, and I think I've said this before, but I really want to always drill into you guys, is keep in mind that when you meet Muslims now or have friends, you may know more about the history than some of them. And here's the reason why. Let me ask you this. Those of you who grew up in Christian households, which probably most of you have, did you know about the history of how the Bible was created, or about all of these debates between various churches and the theological debates about the nature of Jesus? Probably a lot of you have not. If you grew up Buddhist and Hindu, did you grow up learning all of the history that has happened in India as you explored? Do you know about all these different holy books that they've had? Well, I have many Jewish friends who've never read the Talmud, and they are even religious, or I shouldn't say they haven't read it. Well, I have definitely met Jewish friends that haven't read the Talmud that are not religious, but most of my Jewish friends have not. Even the ones that are religious explored a lot of the Talmud that much and don't necessarily have a strong background on it. And then I've met some that do. So I guess here's my whole point. Just keep in mind that sometimes we have this trap of becoming too smart. In other words, like, we learn about all these things and then we think that everybody else knows them. It's just like if someone from the United States. Many of us, I teach U.S. history right now, and many are going, gosh, I never knew about the Mexican-American War and how we're in California because we took it from Mexico through a war. That should be so obvious. That should be an obvious fact. It's not. I had a Sunni Muslim girl take my class, and she didn't understand the Shiite-Sunni split until she took my class. So, again, when we look at the historical development of things, just realize that most people are culturally a part of their religious traditions or their history. You can be a proud American Christian and not know that much about American history or Christian history. But you know that you are Christian, and you know that you are American, and there's certain immediate things before you that identify you to relate to those kinds of things. And so, and then you have people who have a very sophisticated knowledge of Christianity and American history, and those are usually people who are a part of like groups, political groups, cultural groups, professors, pastors, right? So, just want you to keep that in mind. Okay, so I also want you to have a really happy Thanksgiving coming up here. All work is due on Sunday this week. And I want you to, there's been so much going on, and there are legitimate debates that people have about the history of Thanksgiving and its relationship to the idea of the Native Americans, and I have many vegan friends and vegetarian that don't eat turkeys. Well, the bottom line is, I think that the idea of a day of thankfulness, no matter how you like to celebrate that, is a great thing to do. And I think if you can get along with your friends and family now, that's great too, and something that hopefully you're going to be able to enjoy. Now, having said that, excuse me, I have to segue. This is a little bit of it's about the same kind of speech that I gave my US 102 class. My 101. I try not to be so political that I shove any kind of point of view down anybody's throat in my classes. I feel kind of weird about that. And this election was very contentious. I've already kind of spoke a little bit in regards to that. But I did some research this weekend, and there's some things that I just want to get everybody thinking about. So I'm not attacking you if you voted for Donald Trump, but there's just something a little bit beyond him even that I just wanted to address. So There is a fact that as he ran, Islamophobia and just a lot of racist attacks started increasing. And he never said to do those things, but, well, I mean, unless people were at his rallies. He did call for protesters to get punched, but that's a whole other topic. The bottom line is, maybe I shouldn't even say he called them to get punched, but it was something like that. The bottom line is he had a very combative rhetoric. I don't want to overstep what I'm saying. And he said a lot of things that were coded, but led to a lot of popularity for him within the white nationalist movement. Even though not a good chunk of people voting for him are not white nationalists and agree to those things, but all of those groups, for the most part, have endorsed him. And then I thought, well, is that fair? I mean, what do you make of that? Okay, well, you know. So then he brings in Bannon. I mean, he gives this great speech after he gets elected. I want to be the president for all people. And then he brings in Steve Bannon. And so I just want to kind of let you know, it's very confusing in the media who to trust. We have such terrible quality media. But I did my own research from the sources. And so here's what I discovered. Steve Bannon is a kind of advocate for conservatism or right-wing views. And from the speeches I've listened to him about, and you know, from what I looked at him, he doesn't say things that controversial in terms of just what you'd expect somebody in the Republican Party to have, and that's your values or it's not. But where it gets a little tricky is that he ends up taking over editorial control of Breitbart News. Breitbart News, this media source, was originally a Jewish American man about my age, but he died around my age. And he was mainly trying to make it a defense of Israel, critics of Israel, and conservative leaning. And then under Steve Bannon, he admits in interviews that he ended up helping this to be a voice or channel for the alt-right, A-L-T, right as in right wing. And it stands for alternative right. Now that's where things start to get people a little nervous. So what's the alt-right? Now it's a confusing term because it's a coalition of sorts. It's a movement. And many people who claim to be a part of the alt-right at times or will say it maybe don't know what they're claiming to. The founders have a very intense ideology, but the broader base of what is the alt-right is a little bit more confusing. But there's some core ideologues that are kind of the founders of the alt-right that have a much more clear kind of vision of the world that I'm going to address in a second. Now, what's interesting about Breitbart is you have this guy who writes for it a lot, and he's on media occasionally called Milo Yiannopoulos, and he outwardly states, I am a gay Jewish man. And so saying that this is a racist, anti-Semitic media center is just rubbish. And, he's dismissed any of the, he's very much mocked the idea, that people are making such a big concern about all of this. So what would a gay Jewish man be doing with people being accused of being Nazi-like, right? Okay? And that makes sense. And then I went to Breitbart to read some of his articles. By the way, they are absolutely misogynistic. They're really say terrible things about women, but I guess that's not there's people who care. I happen to care. Actually, I don't even know what I'm saying. Actually, because I didn't mention this before. You just look at Breitbart News, BREITBART, and just see what they're writing. Just take a look. Now, he mentioned something about the alt-right, and people are also saying the alt-right is what we're worried about. And they're also saying, well, this is rubbish. You guys are being alarmists, silly, to make a big deal and act like, again, here we are, Jews and gays working with them, and you're acting like they're Nazis. This is all propaganda from the liberal media and stupid idiots and blah, blah, blah. That's how they talk. So then I read that article. I read this article about what Milo has to say about the alt-right, and he insults all sorts of people, even neo-Nazi, skinheads is kind of like the low dregs of white society. And then he name drops somebody in the positive named Richard Spencer. And then I looked up Richard Spencer, and that was a game changer for me. Because Richard Spencer, who's a founder of the National Policy Institute and one of the founders of the alt-right movement, I mean, you should just look at him in his own words if you want. I watched a lecture of his called Why They Hate Us. And I think he is a reclothed Nazi for sure. I mean, it's not Nazism though, it's a new type of right-wing movement, but it is essentially, it's fascism. That's what it is. And it's linked internationally somewhat to the European right. It's influenced by Europeanism. It's tragic for me, I'm a history teacher. He quoted Beowulf and talked about Heidegger and Nietzsche. I love these things. But then I saw the overall arching argument he had, and it was terrifying to me. And so there's several things I just want to say about the alt-right. One, they're not even conservatives. They're actually anti-conservative. They hate conservatives. They think conservatives, as the alternative right, they think conservatives are the ones that really ruined America and Europe. And what is the main gripe they have is that immigration occurred. Not just illegal immigration. Immigration has ruined the demographic makeup. They're white nationalists. They don't call themselves white supremacists. They basically say, I think the paraphrase their ideas is, well, Nigerians are great in Nigeria. If I would love to visit Nigeria on a trip if I want to go see something there, and Nigerians have a right to do things a Nigerian way, but they don't have a right to come here and make us change our cultural makeup. Now, there's a part of their more sophisticated argument that doesn't sound so bad at first. I mean, they basically say, we should look like the Andy Griffith TV show, some calm, wonderful time period. They talk about positive things, architecture, culture, incompatibility of different people living together. Now, here's the elephant in the room, and here's the chilling vision that I put together. They make a very strong case why, America and Europe would just be less turbulent if it was predominantly people who have the same cultural sharing. This is how they do it. So say white Christian backgrounds, for example. So then, so let's just say that we bought into that. How would that work? There's only one way you could make that work, even if that was a fair or a right vision or whatever. I don't know if you wanted to give them that path. You have to deport lots of people. You have to have internment camps. You have to have ethnic cleansing. That's it. That's the only way. You can't bring the old Europe back the way before, or the United States, without something like that. And that's essentially what they're arguing for. And their main target in all of this is the Muslim. The Muslim in this environment is the new Jew. Okay? This is why Jewish and gay men who are Western-centric can link up with these forces, and why they're a little bit different than the Nazis. And the alternative right, and they're gaining momentum, and France Le Pen is set to possibly win. There are in Scandinavia and in Holland and other places there is a momentum to go to the far right, and it's mainly a fear of dealing with refugees and especially Muslims. And their movement isn't super large, but my concern is what happens when we have the next terrorist attack. I hate to go there, but right now, it's not clear if Steve Bannon is really like that ideologically in the same mindset as the people that has been writing for this magazine. And it's not clear what his relationship is with the alt-right, other than saying that he probably gave a platform to it. But what happens with people with these loose connections, at the very least, are in power and something like a terrorist attack happens. And they're already talking about registering Muslim refugees, as if a refugee wasn't already registered, or there is talk about deporting a lot of people. This all seems very much, it feels, some of us are feeling like this looks like the alt-right is going from being a fringe movement of discontent to something that's actually potentially has potential power. I mean, so look, if I'm wrong at being alarmist, if this is just going to be another presidency like being under Bush or being under Clinton, Bill Clinton, or under Obama, then that's fine. I'm glad to be wrong. I don't want to get everybody, I don't want to, come up with conspiracy theories. But when I look at the political mood in Europe, and I look at what was created during this campaign, and I see these kind of characters having anywhere near some sort of closeness to the White House, under a climate of fear, when there is a real problem of terrorism, and we haven't resolved the issue of undocumented workers, which we have like several million, meaning that our society hasn't resolved that. When we have all these racial tensions that have been building up, that we've been seeing between police and the black community, and it's not been resolved, and it's under this environment. As a historian, this is historically all of the wrong conditions for what I can see as a potential surprise for us. So I just want us to be thinking about what kind of persons we are. Like, under fear, right now you can be rational, but what about the next terrorist attack? What about some other terrible shock? What kind of America do you want this to be? In other words, what kind of person do you want to be? What do we want? What can we live with as to what we're supporting? I think that our politics are getting a little more serious right now than they've been before, and we need to just think about that. And again, forgive me if it was inappropriate for the bounds that I'm going into, but I just feel like as your history instructor, I needed to say what I needed to say. Okay, have a good week.